Good morning, everyone. Sorry, I lost my voice. Too much partying over the holidays or something. I'm not sure what. Actually, I was up skiing, I think, and I went night skiing. And so I remember checking the temperature up there. It was 4 degrees at Brighton the night I was up there. And I think now I'm paying for it on my voice. But again, thanks for joining us. Coming off the holidays, many of you are trying to get back into your busy schedules, and I appreciate you taking some time out to come as we figure out ways this new year to. I keep talking about 2020 being the year of perfect vision, of course, because it's 2020. But I think there's a lot of opportunities ahead for us in our organization to have perfect vision of where we're going, and I'm excited that AWS is here today to help us figure out how we might sharpen the saw, do some things that might help us as an organization and as a state. We have a lot of opportunity, I think, in this year. Maybe know, of course, our data center's moving, this building's moving. By the way, we're talking about how great this auditorium is now, and it's coming down. So we noticed they missed putting in a projector, so we've improvised. But as we sharpen the saw and figure out things that we need to do this year, I was thinking about actually skiing. My son, I'm going to brag about my son for a second. He makes skis for a company called DPS, the Department of Public Safety. I think it stands for Dave's Powder Skis or something like that, if any of you skiers out there. And he made me some skis, so I had to go. And so I was skiing with him. He was boarding, I was skiing. And he's in his 20s now, and I remember taking him his first time. And he's doing all these crazy things. We went to this terrain park at Brighton. I was really impressed. I go, wow, that's my kid doing that. I was pretty excited to see some of these things he was doing. But I remember the first time I took him, and we were up at Brighton, and I was holding him. I was kind of holding him between my skis and kind of talking him through everything. He was probably like 3 or 4 years old, and we were going okay. And I was skiing backwards, holding his tips together and kind of telling him how to snowplow and turn and whatnot. And we get back on the lift, and we're going back up. And I think, he played Xbox even at that age. I'm not parent. But he goes, Dad, you don't need to go home anymore. All right. And so I turned him loose on the mountain, and he tore it up. Did really well. I think it was the Xbox. He thought if he could do it in Xbox, he could do it in real life. So he was trying all these crazy things. He was 4 years old. And I was so impressed that people were watching him ski down and going, how long has this kid been skiing? I go, this is his first time. And so I really was excited to see where he got. And it was kind of fun to see him again the last couple of weeks. Why my voice is so raspy is about skiing again, and to see where he is. And I think that's what we can do as an organization. I feel like sometimes we're being held back artificially sometimes. And hopefully from this meeting today, you can get that sense of being turned loose and going for all of the great things the potential that we have. And that's what I want to do today, is figure out how to turn that potential loose and kind of watch. My son was 4 years old skiing, and I was the one holding him back. We want to make sure that you don't have the barriers as we're trying to move more quickly and be more responsive in our organization, and find those barriers or those things that are holding back so that we can achieve that potential. So with that, I want to turn the time over now to Miriam Macklemore. Sorry, there's a rapper out there. This same son, he's a crazy kid. Teaches me about these rappers out there. But Miriam Macklemore, who's with AWS, and I'll let Miriam kind of introduce herself and then take us through this. So thank you, Miriam.
Yes. Thank you so much for, oops, let me turn on. Can you hear me? Yes, that worked? Yeah, there we are. Thank you for giving me the time today to talk to you about moving at a higher frequency, and that's our subject today. I am an enterprise strategist with AWS. Prior to joining AWS, I was the corporate CIO for the Coca-Cola company. And I was with Coca-Cola for 26 years, so spent quite a long career there. Prior to that, I was a consultant, so did other things even before then. And at Coca-Cola, given the size and scale of the company, it operates in 209 countries. We have 35 major markets around the world. We experienced all of the challenges that I think as an IT organization, I found most organizations struggle with. So now my role at AWS is to go around the country and the world talking to companies about how do you create more agility and speed in your organization. So I'm thrilled to have that opportunity to talk to you today, and hopefully I'll say some things that are useful for you. I loved Mike's story. Because I was invited to Utah, I came out a couple of days early. I also have a son. He happens to play college football and just finished his college football career. And so he was finally able to come out and come skiing with me because he didn't want to get hurt prior to that and end the football career early. But I also started teaching him to ski and holding him, as we went down the mountain. Now he's 300 pounds, 6'2", and so I did not hold him anytime during this vacation. But getting going with cloud is a little bit like that. It's taking slow steps at first to learn the environment, but then you got to get out there and ski down the mountain and take some risk and fall down, learn how to get up and figure out what you don't know. And that's the experience that I had in our journey to cloud at Coca-Cola. We actually started relatively early in cloud for a large enterprise back in 2014. Mine started with a problem. So sometimes it's good to have a challenge, I guess, and a problem to get you moving. One of my roles at Coke was I had everything consumer facing for the company. So all web and mobile, that included the Olympics and the World Cup and the Super Bowl, so big events. And so as a team, back in 2013, actually, the Super Bowl, we had what we thought was a cool mobile game going for the Super Bowl. And it was a race where you could pick, as a consumer, the ending of the race. You could pick the team that won the last Coca-Cola in the world. Okay, we thought it was cool, or at least the marketing team thought it was cool. But as an IT organization, this is the Super Bowl. You want to make sure that you have enough capacity. You're not going to have an issue during the Super Bowl. Very expensive media during that game. And so we're on a call on Sunday, making sure everything's looking good. All the consumers are on, everything's going well. Well, this happened to be the year that the Super Bowl was played in the Superdome. I don't know if you recall, but there was a full power outage in the Superdome in the middle of the game. Well, as the IT leader for an app and in a game that was playing, suddenly people that previously had not had time to be on our app decided they had some time. There was no game on at home. There was no game on in the stadium. And so we had taken marketing's estimate of the consumer uptake on this event. We had 10x'd it. Even with that ceiling that we had created, we did not scale. And so people are getting on the site, it's spinning. They're not able to complete, they can't get on. It's really poor experience. And as the marketing IT leader at the time, I had to go into work on Monday after the Super Bowl on Sunday and explain what IT had done. Now, IT did not pull the plug on the Superdome. But still, we know as IT professionals, if it worked, well, it was supposed to. And if it didn't, what'd you do? And so cloud was my answer. That was how I started Coke's move to cloud. I went into the chief marketing officer and I said, I'm done guessing. I want you to be able to do the things that you want it to do. I want the markets around the world to be able to create the consumer experiences when they want, as they need to, and control how much they spend on it. Because I, prior to moving to cloud, was taking the cost of infrastructure, spreading it to the markets around the world based on sales data. So even if you hadn't run a big event, you're getting a charge for the infrastructure because there's no other way to do it. I picked up all 600 brand websites that I had responsibility for globally, moved them to AWS, and suddenly as an IT team, we got out of the way. Because prior to that, I was having to sequence the markets and go, oh, wait, no, I've got the Olympics coming. And so you can't do your local promotion because my team needs to focus on the Olympics. And so we were the group saying no constantly to markets all over the world versus saying, how do we partner? How do we create this cool experience that you want to create and do something for our organization? And so that was what cloud gave me. Now, it wasn't easy. I was at Coke 26 years. There were people there much longer than me. And it's a hard transition, just culturally. Not so much the technology, that part works. That part actually is pretty straightforward. It's getting the organization in a place where it can take advantage of these new tools and move quickly. But it was a great journey for us. I started with marketing. It was a great place to start because all they wanted was to move faster. So finding somebody that's willing to go down the path with you early is always a good way to go. So the presentation that I have for you today, we have a team of former CIOs. And what we do, as I said, is talk to companies around the world. And based on our experience, we put together this presentation because everybody's struggling, regardless of industry, with the same challenge. How do we move faster? How do I leverage the technology? How do I adopt all these changes in technology more quickly? And so that's what I have for you today. And the fact is, your leadership is looking for ways to create agility and speed. Every company is looking for speed. But the problem is, as humans, no change is our default state, right? We're coming into a new year, it's 2020, a new decade, and change is just hard. And so we are trying to move to this place where change is constant. And the companies are looking to move, but they feel like I need to be more digital. But the reality is, can y'all see behind me? All right, good. Very few organizations feel like they have a roadmap to what does it mean to be more digital? How do I create this environment in my organization? And they believe to be competitive, it's absolutely required. And so a lot of the people that I talk to now, it's interesting, is board of directors, is CEOs. We had a CFO event at our big conference reInvent because it's not just IT trying to figure this out now. It is companies trying to figure out how to stay competitive. And what we found, when companies move to cloud and start leveraging current technology, they can deliver value so much more frequently. And that's just more fun. To be honest, as an IT professional, it is more fun to go fast and deliver things versus I'm working on the same thing and struggling through the same processes and controls that we've been dealing with for me, over 35 years of my career. So how do we do that? And why do we not? And so why do we not? We had, and certainly at Coke still had mainframe. I believe y'all probably have one of those, right? We had fragile systems. We had security concerns. We were afraid. We actually did melt down our data center, which was, I saw yours right over here. Ours was right there in the Coke basement. Melted it down, went over there to flip the switch. Nothing happened. So having gone through some of those experiences, people are afraid. And the big bet thing that we've done for years Your business partners are afraid because some of those big bet launches didn't go the way that they said on paper they were supposed to go. And all of us, if you've been in the organization long enough, have experienced those challenges. And so the challenge I find with the big bets is, as enterprises and organizations, we tend to have these big visions. We want to do something big, but that leads to big execution. Instead of breaking it down into smaller pieces, we tend to create these big plans with big execution that require a lot of pre-planning up front. And then as you have a long pre-planning, more stuff gets stuck into the scope. And then the blast radius of the risk, if something goes wrong, amplifies as well. And so what we're trying to do to mitigate that risk, we start implementing manual processes. So we're like, wait, the risk has gotten really big. We need some checkpoints and gates to ensure that we're going to be okay. So that just makes it even bigger and longer. And then we have the launch heroics that come at the end, right? The all weekend, all night, all whatever, right? To make it happen. This is what we all, if you've been in IT for any length of time, you've lived through one of these type of initiatives. And what we want to do is figure out these anti-patterns and what you can do to address these challenges. And so we came up with 7, and I'll take you through from these big bets to getting to smaller batch sizes to protecting core business, and I'll walk you through each of these 7. So first, moving from big bets to reduced batch size. If you can shrink your deliverables down and do frequent delivery, your blast radius comes down with it, your risk profile comes down with it, and you start providing value to your customers or business partners much more quickly. Also allows you to start eating that elephant kind of a bite at a time versus trying to tackle some big fragile system. Shrink it. We had a very fragile SAP environment, one of the largest implementations of SAP. And the way we talk about our SAP, which had grown to be this scary octopus, we had spent so much on SAP, they gave us the software free. Now the consulting was not free, but the software was free. So everything that we could, we put in SAP, which is a really bad idea. If you have that strategy, stop right now. But that created this scary octopus that ultimately we said, you know, our strategy is we're going to cut this octopus into calamari, right? We're going to chop it up into smaller pieces. And so we could bring SAP back down to what it did really well, but not all these appendages that stuck into spaces that it shouldn't be in. So getting to a place where you can start breaking apart those legacy applications is absolutely critical. The other is the highest paid person in the room, the hippo in the room. We did a lot of things because the highest paid person in the room said to. And so moving to data-driven decisions versus just going with what the boss said is another pattern that we need to change. I think I'm on the 4th one. Silos within IT and between vendors, the throw it over the wall scenarios where people have to relearn because I threw it from dev into support. They've got to relearn everything you just built and learned how to do. And so moving to a place where the teams span not only technology and business, but much more of a DevOps type of model. And then these large feature sets with really unknown value, that big scope bloat, that list of things that you are going to put into this new application. Moving to, and I love this statement, moving to a world where we maximize the work not done. Think about that for a minute. Wouldn't that be a nice place to be? And to get recognized for it. I maximized the work not done. So that means releasing things, seeing if those extra features are actually needed before you just build them all in and they never get used. As we moved out of our data center at Coke, you had those applications that were absolutely critical to somebody, but no one went, a few years later, no one claimed them. You couldn't even find the owners. And so we did that thing of turn it off, let's wait and see who screams, right? Been there, you're like, didn't hear from anybody. Then you get to year end and a couple of people call and go, hey, where's my report? And you're like, okay, maybe that application, maybe we need to run that report. So getting to a place where you're actually maximizing the amount of work not done is a really nice place to be versus walking in January and thinking about all the work you gotta do. Let's think about how do I get rid of work I don't need to do that will not actually add the value that it's expected to add. Find software and building processes that aren't nimble versus relentlessly automating, creating an environment where you have smaller components that you can bring together and piece together these solutions, much more Lego type of model. And then, I love this one. And we all did it, or at least I did it. Maybe you guys didn't do it, but planning for best case. You're asked, okay, what's the best case go live date? Why would we ever answer that question? Right, because there's never, best case does not work out. Right, but you can't say, oh, wait 3 years and I'll have it. So going back to smaller batch sizes, quicker release, minimal viable product, things that you can get out into people's hands so they can touch it, feel it, and we can make decisions together on what to do next. So getting to a place as well where you test for failure, you assume failure, and you create mechanisms to test for it. Like the kid skiing down the hill the first time, they're going to fall down. Teach them how to get up and get up quick so they can keep moving. So those are my 7 anti-patterns and new patterns of IT. Hopefully a couple of those resonated with you and your environment. Also find there's a handful of things that different companies are doing to start creating a model that works more effectively. One is this breaking up the work from monolithic to microservices. The next, absolutely critical, is investing in your workforce. Every company out there cannot dump their workforce and go hire a brand new workforce. That is not going to work out. We have to retrain, right? We have to invest in the people we have. You guys know this environment and are critical, but new skills are required to operate in these future technologies. We also need to automate the bureaucracy and start finishing. Finishing work, finishing means it's released. And then build it in, don't bolt it on. At Amazon, our approach to anything that is routine is to automate it so that you can move up to the higher order task. So let's step through these. So breaking up the work, we talked about this elongated process that we all have dealt with at some point in our career. How do we get to these shorter intervals and constant release? And so the principles are reduce size of the deliverables, transform continuously, start eating these big applications you have, like my SAP example, and maximize the work not done. Don't build it till you see it's critical. The benefits you get from that, you get frequent value delivery. You get things in people's hands very quickly. You've got that smaller blast radius for risk. If it doesn't go well, I can recover smaller things much more quickly than those huge monolithic projects. And from a finance standpoint, finance guys love this, staged investment. I used to go and ask for, okay, give me $20 million for this thing. I'm not really sure, I haven't designed, I haven't built, right? But give me $20 million and trust me. That did not make the finance team very happy. And I came from finance, I actually started my career in finance. So getting to a place of staged investment, the finance guys get on your side, which is nice to have. And so an example from Yelp. So one of our customers, they had a huge monolithic application, and we moved to a service-oriented architecture, so that was good. Broke it down into 150 applications, so that was better than this huge monolith. But they had this one absolutely critical revenue management application that was critical but very dangerous to change. And so what they were able to do is leveraging some of the AWS services step functions. They were able to break apart this revenue application, because what was happening is any single account that had an issue stopped the entire process. So they couldn't bill anybody else because one account had an error. You probably experienced some application like that it just blocked the entire process. And so breaking this up so they could run in parallel using the current cloud services was huge for them, decoupling the functionality and carving out one task after another so they could run in parallel. So if you had a problem with an account, you could run and keep billing other accounts. And so this was huge. And these are available. There's YouTube. You can watch the YouTube video of the Yelp customer talking through this. So the ability to break apart tasks, isolate them, and correct is a huge benefit of the technology available to you in cloud. Next thing, invest in your workforce. So putting your workforce closer to your customers is absolutely critical. And this is an example, and I know it's probably hard to read these, but these are all the things that have come into IT that we're all trying to adopt, right? It starts down here with ITIL and agile development and infrastructure automation, right through RESTful APIs, virtualization, private cloud, all this stuff that's hitting us, right, as an IT professional, all the way down here to serverless. So that's a litany of changes in the IT industry. The problem with larger enterprises is they adopt them more like at this speed. We're going to do a 2-year ITIL implementation, then a couple more years for infrastructure automation, and then we're into big data for the next 3 to 5 years. We don't have that kind of time anymore because the change is happening like that. And enterprises are adopting it like this. So we've got to get in a cultural mindset that change is constant. We can't do these 3 to 5 year projects anymore. That's over, it's done, right? We just need to say goodbye to the long-term projects and figure out how to work in shorter increments and adopt more quickly. And that requires investing in your workforce. You are the people that are needed to do this. There's just some reskilling needed. When I started back in 2013, 2014 with moving to cloud, there wasn't as much training available today. AWS has very robust training, and it's technical training and professional certifications as well. So you don't have to be an architect to go through training and to get cloud skills. You got to move to more of a DevOps model. It makes much more sense in today's world to run what you build versus all these handoffs, because they just create the slowness that you're trying to get past. And realign yourselves around customer value, not the systems. I was in a lot of different organization structures, and the ones that were the slowest were aligned around optimizing for IT versus optimizing for customer value. And we did that, right? We had CVs for SAP, and we had some for integration, and then we had the whole infrastructure team, the network team, and right, that's a lot of handoffs across an organization. So getting to a place where you have multidisciplinary skills in an organization is very helpful in a way that we see most customers organized today. The benefits, you get this cultural shift that changes content, right? And people actually are looking to see what's coming next. What should we be thinking about?
We reduce the handoffs and the tech debt that comes with all of those handoffs, because all that relearning goes away. And you put your organization much closer to driving customer value. So that's what we see. Most organizations all over the world. I was in Japan this fall, same thing. I was in China in November, same thing. Right? This is not unique to any industry, any organization. Everyone is trying to figure out how to go faster, how to get the skills we need, and create value for their organizations. So this is our, traditional titles for folks in IT, and now we're going to move to this more of a product mindset with a mix of those skills within these teams. And in Amazon, the pizzas up there, those are pizzas, not some strange cogs. We talk about 2 pizza teams. So we believe that a team should only be as big as one that 2 pizzas would serve. So that's kind of 7 to 9 people-ish. We don't say it has to be 7 people or it has to be 9 people, but it is the size of team that keeps you from having to create a communication mechanism for that team to get together and know what they're doing. Because the minute you start layering on overhead to get a team to talk, you slow yourself back down. So at Amazon, we constantly break teams back down into this size. As a capability grows, we break it back down into small teams again to optimize for speed, because we believe speed matters. Now, I did mention I have a son that plays college football, and this 2 pizza thing does not work well for him, right? It's kind of him. As I walk out of the football game, this is funny, just a side story. I was amazed by this. At the end of every football game, 100 guys on the team, they hand them each a large pizza. And then we go to dinner. I was like, you're eating the pizza in the car on the way to dinner. Your point is what? But 2 pizzas for regular people is, a good sized small team, mixed skill set. You might not need 100% of a person, like a security person. Do you need 100% on this X project? Maybe not. Maybe they're on two pizza teams. But the other focus here is focus. You're trying to allow people to be accountable for what they're building, what they're delivering, but also focus on it. Because if you're in a COE with, like our security COE that we had at Code, they're dealing with everybody's security issues. They're not going to be deep in any one of them. They're running across the surface, very shallow. And this is the opportunity to go deep, actually make decisions, and take accountability for the decisions you make. So that's the concept of investing in your workforce, leveraging the people and skills that you have in the organization in the new model to go quickly. The next is automating your bureaucracy and start finishing. Had a lot of stuff that we developed that never actually went live. A lot of wasted time and energy on things that didn't ever create the value. So again, breaking this down into smaller increments. So even if one of these little pieces doesn't get used, it's a little piece. So we toss it. You're not writing off major applications that never worked out well, which I've done. So getting to a place where you're finishing, the principles there is replace the gatekeeping with automated controls. Allow people to get stuff into production without the stops. Automate it. Give them signals, automated signals. If something box wasn't checked. Standardize on reusable building blocks. I did that just, simple example. I said I had 600 brand websites globally. We went through microservices architecture with those sites. Things like login and registration, I was not letting people rebuild all over the world because of the PII risk that created for the company. And so that was a service that my team owned and run, and the markets could call and leverage that. They could reskin it, but the code was code I ran. Same with, Code does a lot of under the cap promotions. The algorithm that generates the codes for the under cap promotion, my team own that algorithm. I've got to farm out the algorithm all over the world and get hacked. And so certain services, reusable building blocks, and then people do the stuff that matters to their team. So create a stable of reusable building blocks. And then again, finished means released. So the benefits you get there, you enable teams to work with agile IT assets on their own timeline. I was sharing earlier something that was surprising to me at Amazon. Amazon's actually organized to limit the communication between teams. So I have to think about that for a minute. Like, I'm organized to limit the communication between teams, because the belief is that if I let you work independently, you will be more empowered and quicker to market with your component. Versus if I put you in this heavily matrixed organization where you're dependent on everybody, that's going to slow us down. So it's a loose coupling, as we call it in IT. And so you can move fast, but you're accountable for your component, and it better meet the specs that are published because somebody else is trying to plug into your component. So it's an interesting model, but very effective, and that's how Amazon innovates across so many domains, is we isolate the teams and let them run like a whole boatload of startups with reusable components according to a published framework, right? So there are rules. You got to get onboarded, and there's rules. But once you understand the framework, once you understand the reusable components, you can go fast. Like driving a car, we're back to raising kids, right? Have 3 kids, almost grown. And when they were young, right? Trust them with little things. As they grew older, trust them with bigger things, but there's rules within which they operate. Right? Even just driving a car, you can have a car. If you wreck the car, you won't have a car. Right? If you speed and get all these tickets, you won't have a car. Right? There's certain rules, but if you comply within those basic guidelines, you have a car and you can go. And so getting to that place where people and the teams are enabled with agile assets and can operate under their own timeline is where speed comes from. That shortens the time from idea to implementation, because that's a model that everybody gets used to operating in. They know what components they can trust, and they can go pretty quickly. And it leans out the bureaucracy. I found that talking to companies around the world, we put in all these processes for a reason. We had a really good reason. We put in financial budget controls because we wanted good financial stewardship. That was a good reason. But we created a financial process that doesn't always look at the business outcome. We had financial stewardship was the business outcome we were trying to drive. But now we're just checking the box of the process. Same was true of PMO. We put in PMO for risk mitigation. But then it just became a matter of checking all the boxes, and did you go through all the gates of the PMO process? Were we actually again focused on risk mitigation? I'm not sure. I think we lost sight of the fact that I was doing that. Maybe I only needed one gate because there wasn't that much risk, and therefore I could have skipped it completely. But no one's empowered to make that decision. What about security review? We put in some of these security reviews because we wanted to make sure that we weren't going to get hacked or attacked, and Coke was a big target for attack, because if you could get Coke with you in the headlines, you got, front page press. But did everything have to go through all the gates for the security process? And so the challenge with some of the bureaucracy that we created for really good reasons is we just started executing the process and lost sight of the business outcome that process was put in place to drive. So something to think about when you look at the things that are slowing you down. Are brains included in the decisions you're making about implementing and leveraging those processes and all the steps in those processes? So making bureaucracy lean. When people do this, what we have seen, averages across companies that we've worked with, these are mostly large enterprises or multinationals. 5 times lower failure rate, 46 times more frequent deployments, 440 times faster commit to deploy, and 44% more time spent on new than on maintaining the old. Because you automate it. So an example from Verizon, Verizon's moving another 1,000 critical business applications over to AWS. And to do that, to have that scope of work in the cloud, they needed to create the automation in security to move those workloads quickly because they had to hit and check all the boxes. So they created some cloud, leveraging cloud tools that are much more brought today, more introduced at reInvent here in November. For cloud native security, risk and compliance purposes, they have automation that analyzes basic configuration rules, that deploys and validates the test configuration, that checks for production and release approvals. So getting to a place where you automate, you can automate in any space, these checks that we historically have done manually, if they have become repetitive, you can automate them. And that is a bias that we certainly have at Amazon because everybody always wants to move to the higher order work. So look at what you can automate. Verizon felt like this created the speed that they needed so that they still had the compliance with security policy. They had the ability then to run when needed, rapid integration of new rules because they could automate them and scale across the organization very quickly. So gain that consistency that you're looking for. And then finally, the build it in, don't bolt it on. I love this quote from Werner Vogels, who's the CTO of AWS. It's IT. Some's gonna fail, right? It's hardware, it's software, there's people involved, there's gonna be a problem. Let's not promise it's gonna be perfect. It's a given. The objective is how fast you can recover and how seamless you can make that, right? So we get past this whole disaster recovery mindset. We move to disaster indifference, right? It doesn't matter because we were able to recover. It was so seamless. We're highly redundant. You didn't know. But yeah, server run out because that's going to happen. And so the assume attack and failure, shrink that blast radius, and the principles there are do failure experiments. You got to actually practice failing. We practice it as if it's going to go perfectly, and that's not really a great practice. So embedding the compliance and security and make security and reliability everyone's job, not a separate team. It has to be everyone's job. Certainly at Amazon, it is job zero. Everything starts with security because otherwise we're not in business. So benefits, resilient, flexible systems, it stems the natural drift and it builds a culture of security. If security is everyone's job, then there's a culture of security. But unfortunately, most enterprises think about resiliency with this mindset of if everything goes exactly as we planned, we're gonna hit the date. I mean, how did that work out for all of us? That does not mirror the reality we live in. So we have to leverage things like the principles of chaos engineering, right? Less practice, discipline of experimenting, building confidence, right? I can show failure and I can show recovery. And not in old disaster recovery. I went through some of those disaster recovery works that were very, very robust, but very long. Break it down to smaller components, fail forward fast was the mindset that we had in my career at Coke. And the ability to withstand turbulent conditions. So experimenting, building confidence, and the capacity to withstand problems. Especially if you're gonna collapse a building right here next to your data center. I'd be moving quick. And so if you can experiment to ensure that the impact of failure is mitigated. An example from TravelX, they use them in all the airports. I was recently in China, as I mentioned, so I was there exchanging money. And so they had the need to be able to push out capability to all of these different locations all over the world so that they could have the speed of digital business that made them the place you went to change money, because obviously it's a easily disrupted environment, right, in money exchange. And so their focus was first training their team on cloud, second, being clear about building, buying tool set and shortening their approval cycle. And so getting to a place where high frequency means continuous learning. And that's just something to accept, and maybe from some of us that have been around a long time, this, oh, I gotta learn more stuff, new skills. It's a little exhausting some days, but as IT professionals, we wanna know the cool new stuff, right? I mean, I can't have my kids asking how cloud works, mom doesn't know. Come on, with my resume, you gotta be able to explain it. Getting to a mindset where you're refactoring and simplifying the systems, and getting cycle times down to 0, right? Versus it's just, let's shorten cycle times. Let's go aggressive here. Get them down to 0. So Verizon felt like, this journey was absolutely the critical component was how cloud fluent their organization was. And that was probably the biggest mistake that I made in the beginning of the cloud journey at Coca-Cola. What I did first was train my key architects, because we had a guy named Michael and a guy named Sam. These were the two critical architects, one for my consumer business, one for my legacy business. And I knew everyone was going to go ask Michael and Sam, right, if this cloud thing was going to work, could it work with our environment? And I'm like, yep, so I got to get them trained and a couple of folks around them. That was a mistake because I created bottlenecks in those two guys. And they didn't have a community of people that understood cloud that they could talk to. So round 2, we trained much more broadly. And then the organization became cloud fluent. Then we could actually have real conversations about our environment, our applications. I had things like the Coca-Cola formula system I was trying to deal with, and make sure that our head of technical, which is the guy that runs R&D and science at Coca-Cola, was comfortable with moving formula data to the cloud. I moved HR to the cloud. We were in an SAP on-prem HR system that I moved to Workday, which runs in AWS, and that's putting people data in the cloud globally, which was a whole different set of conversations. So the conversation's not the same, right? It's not the same conversation for the marketing team that I dealt with first, or for the HR team, or for these PhD scientists and researchers. They're a whole different crowd. And the message from an IT organization had to be different, but it was about creating my organization's cloud fluency that enabled it. Because I had different people that had different skills that knew those groups well and had to be able to explain it in terms those functions could understand, which is very different from consumer web to the Coke formula and product lifecycle management system, laboratory information management systems, and then over to HR systems, legal systems, and our sustainability, our company site, the investor relations team, the analyst relations team. I mean, we got, the whole raft of IT professionals interfacing with a variety of businesses around the world. So getting that message right was absolutely critical for us. So that is what I had to share for you today. I talk about Coca-Cola and Amazon for a long time because I've enjoyed both careers, but we want to take some time and see if you had any questions or things that I could entertain for you. I've been that clear.
When you talk about training, how intensive was the training? What resources, what training resources did you use?
Yeah. So for our architects, right, these guys, are deep engineers and really want to go get all the certifications. So that was a whole one set of folks, right? We gamified it. They would like compete for stickers, right? That said certified AWS architect. So that was one set, that's not everybody, right? I started my career at Cook in finance, then I moved to marketing, then I came to IT, right? I wasn't going to doing a solution architect certification, although I've heard some CIOs have, so, yeah. Just saying, I didn't, so I'm saying that too. But there is a host of professional training as well for more of your project managers or business analysts or business facing folks to go through. We can put together a whole training plan for you, but I will say in the companies that have trained more broadly, their speed to cloud is much faster, because when you only train the architects, it also creates kind of a cultural barrier, because I know cloud, you don't, right? It's you remember the Dr. Seuss, the Sneetches, I used to read that to my kids, ones with starch on the bellies and ones without, right? I've got this, I'm this and I'm special and I'm different because I know cloud and you don't. And that's not a good cultural thing, so broad training so people understand, because it's different, right? Because our first thing that we did at Coke is I took my infrastructure team, called them Cloud, and they built us a data center in the cloud because that's what they knew. So we went vertical, not taking advantage of cloud capabilities and really redesigning for the capabilities of cloud. And so you've got to learn, and you've got to have, second time, we created a cloud team. We mixed the skills on the team. So we had app people and network people and security people and infrastructure people and architects, right? So we had a mixed team that could speak to all the other teams, because the plan for our cloud COE was to teach everyone else and assist them in their first cloud effort. That's the other thing I was saying, a long answer to a short question, is if you're gonna train people, gotta give them work to do. Right, if I train you, but you don't use it, you lose it. So I gotta pick a project that right after training, you're actually gonna work on, so you leverage those skills.
To continue from that, you created these teams, they started to do the work, but they were made up of you had to reorganize.
You had to reorganize.
How did you pry people away from the stuff that has to get done?
Yeah.
Yeah,
so what we did was bring in a partner. So I used a partner called Second Watch and brought them in not to do the new, because often what happened at Coke is the partner would come and do all the new stuff and the associates were left doing the old stuff. And so we actually brought the partner in to run legacy so that we create some ability for our critical people. Now, they still had to stay in touch with what they were doing because they knew it, right? But it gave them the capacity, one, to even go to a training class, and two, to actually work on a project. So we were trying to create about, 30% capacity in people by bringing in a partner so you could learn new skills and start moving to the future. So that worked well for us and was appreciated by the folks on my team because, the consultants didn't come and do all the cool new stuff, or you're left, in the back. Plus, from my standpoint, I wasn't stuck with the consultants forever. I wanted my team to know how to do the work so I could exit the consultants once we had the skills. That's what we did. Yep. But the training team can bring in, where Bruce went, great. They can bring in their training team and put together a whole plan and help you with that. Yep.
What were some of the challenges or roadblocks you had with implementing some of these new concepts?
Yeah, well, one, is the business side, right? You're gonna move people data to the cloud? Yeah, no. That's kind of the answer from our leadership. And so you had to get some executive peer buy-in. And, I pick people who are more interested first. And then it's not that you're shaming others into it, but you get enough momentum going, right? I got going with our chief marketing officer. He was willing to get on stage with me and talk about the agility that IT had brought to his organization. And then the chief technical officer, which again is R&D at Coke, not CTO as in IT, but chief technical as in science, R&D, product package, equipment stuff. He was the next one because he's an R&D guy. He really wanted to leverage new capabilities, new technologies much more quickly in building new product and building new equipment. We had vending machines, and you may have experienced some of the vending machines. Like, do y'all have the freestyle machines where you can mix product? So I had, that is a Coke-owned vending machines. Most vending machines for Coke are owned by bottling companies. The freestyle machines are owned by Coke, and I had responsibility for the technology in that machine. And so that gave you this consumer engagement mechanism direct to consumer. And then we could start demonstrating. So another way we kind of overcame opposition is demonstrating what we could do with this technology. So those machines phoned home every night, gave us data every night. And then I could create reports. We were using Amazon Redshift. I could create reports that told you what day part people were consuming what beverages. I could tell you if the machine was cooling the product properly, tell you if the machine's going to be out of a certain ingredient. And we could do dynamic ordering of cartridges to that machine, to that store, without the customer having to order it. So those types of automations and having a use case or two that resonates with your customers, absolutely critical in the speed. And, back to my HR example, they were not initially thrilled with, okay, HR data in the cloud, worried about risk, but when we could show them what they could do with Workday versus what we were doing with our SAP on-prem HR system with 92 integrations, and we couldn't get to a headcount number still. But we couldn't do it just with technology. The business had to go with us. We had to restructure the business process because it wasn't just the technology's fault we couldn't get to a headcount number in HR. We had more comp and bin packages than we had people. Where we had some HR data and issues that had to be streamlined and cleaned up. So it had to be a partnership model. So the other thing that worked in our favor is the company had a streamlining objective, and IT's response to the streamlining objective was we're going to reduce our application footprint. We had 1,500 major applications that we were using to run Coca-Cola, and that's not all the little bitty access databases and all the other crap that was still hanging around. Is we made a board level objective to take the 1,500 down to under 1,000 as part of our move to cloud. So we went through the whole Gartner 6R review of our application portfolio. Are you going to, retire, retain, replace, re-architect, repurchase, right? The whole assessment. And reported to the board quarterly how many applications we had sunset and reduced or repurchased or what plans we had in place. But the biggest difference in that program that we did, because typically what we've done is taken a year to do the planning of that initiative. And then we'd start the project the next year. We said, no, we're trying to be agile. We're trying to create speed in our organization. You have 30 days to get through 80% of your application portfolio. You have to have a decision, right? Could be wrong. We're okay with failure, right? Could be wrong, but you have to make a decision for the 80%. Then the next 10%, which typically the fragile, bigger applications, right? You got kind of an elephant and then a bunch of medium and smaller size applications. You get another 30 days for those, right? And then you get another 30 days to kind of rethink. But in that last 30 days, you actually have to remove something, right? So you had to start doing something, gain some experience so you knew when you were readjusting your portfolio map, based on some experience, you can make adjustments. And we allowed change over time, but getting to a mindset of even our planning is going to be more agile, and we're going to meet some of the targets. We weren't perfect. We didn't hit all those targets exactly, but because every portfolio was doing it, created some healthy, did you hit the numbers? Amazon has some of these, AWS has some of these things like 50 applications in 50 days, just some targets. or 30-30. We've done some of these with different companies just to create the need for speed, right? Did I answer your question?
Yeah, you kind of hit on some of the cultural, what were some of the cultural or mindset challenges?
Yeah, I mean, some people, again, we had people, new people and younger people to people, they're longer than me. And so you had the mix of folks. And a lot of people, like, yes, I want to learn new skills, got on board. So that wasn't as difficult. What typically is challenging in many companies is middle managers for a couple of reasons. One, they're compensated based on size of team, right? Scope of work, and that can be a barrier. So if you don't fit your compensation so that people can get promoted and get the next level without it being defined by, I gotta have, 200 people under me and this scope of work. So that can be a barrier. And so we had to address our comp model and have like technical tracks where people could get promoted without managerial responsibility. Those kind of things had to get solved. I look over here to this side of her. And then you had to provide training, right? Because we'd say from stage, we're not trying to take your jobs, but Coke had done a bunch of layoffs. And so people don't really believe you when you're on stage saying that. Training speaks more loudly because I figure even if you are taking my job, at least I'm getting skills. So, your feet have to match your mouth. So that was a barrier. And then we had some people just really did not want to go into this new world. But I had a boatload of legacy applications that needed to be dealt with for a period of time, including the mainframe. And so some people opted into, I'll write out the legacy, but that had an end date, right? It was going to be done. And so we just made an agreement that, you're going to find a different job somewhere in Coke or you're going to sunset with that application. But we're closing, and Cloak has closed all data centers completely in cloud. Took 4 years. People often ask, how long did it take? From 2014, closed all last data center in 2018, completely cloud globally. It's pretty fast for a company of that scale. Could be a lot faster now, right? Because there's many more cloud tools than there were when we got started. Yep. Yep.
So I noticed that you said a lot of Scrum practices. Did you use Scrum? And
Yep.
how important was that in your management?
Yeah, absolutely. Went through Agile training, Agile teams, Scrum masters, right? And depending on group and area, right? Some, like my Workday team didn't operate that way, but my consumer team certainly did. So it depended kind of on the environment that we were in and what we were coming from and going to. But, Agile, Scrum, pick your acronym. Anything that for your organization creates the speed and agility, and allows you to make decisions. And to me, that's the biggest barrier. It's not what methodology and approach you take. Is can you actually make a decision? Are you empowered to make a decision?
So one of the things you mentioned in the presentation is getting closer, getting these teams closer to them.
Yep.
You also have product teams that
Yep.
are not as close because these other teams have to focus on products.
Yep.
How did you break that up a little bit and say, okay, these are the value services up front. These are the things you have to build it on in the back. And how did you make that work? Because I know that we struggle a little bit with centralizations versus decentralization. How do you move these things out? What do you move out? What do you keep close? Those things, I think, in my world, I'm in a development group that is slightly, majority centralized, and I'm ready to push us out more because I'm development. I need to provide value. It makes more sense.
Yep.
But you look at some other groups where I'm like saying, okay, maybe that should be more product-based, letting people build on that. But that's a hard thing to do. Again, you're going to have to middle manage them.
Yeah, we tried to, and I say these things, and none of this was easy. It was all heavy lifting. So put that out there, but even internal teams need to be customer focused, even if their customer is the other team.
Yeah. is that
And need
development?
need to have objectives that talk about how did you allow that team to go fast versus how did you stop that team? I had people in my organization that felt like it was their job to stop work. And I didn't realize it. It took me a minute to go, oh, I'm actually incenting these people to stop work versus
Yeah, there's a,
to enable work. They're gonna stop, oh, look, I stopped all these teams from doing anything because their design sucked, right? And you're like, wait a minute, that's not what I thought I was incenting. I thought you were doing design reviews to enable them to do a good delivery.
I do feel like a lot of people here feel that way, like, I'm stuck, don't need to get unstuck.
Because either I don't have the authority to make the decision, or there are people with jobs to stop me. Right?
Silos.
And so how do I get rid of the silos of people that are out there to stop me? Well, I actually took a couple of project teams, and I've heard this done before, put them in place and have them come and report back. What are all the things that stopped you from getting done? You didn't have the authority to make the decision. You didn't have the access to the tools. You didn't, somebody else told you you couldn't. Right? And how do I address all of those barriers?
Yeah, I think something that we struggle with, and this is maybe just because it's young, we lean more on the protect side.
Yep.
Protect what we have, protect our protect.
Yep. That was my first slide up there.
That's right. And then I look at the enable side. And
Right.
I feel like sometimes we lose sight of that, and you do have to have some balance, but you're saying automate and protect as much as possible,
Exactly.
and then enable people to go and
Use
use
those automated tools. You're actually safer that way than putting people in the middle of the process. Automate the security around it, automate the checks, and then let people go. We talked about it at Coke, we called it the secret formula culture, right? It was need to know mindset. And I imagine y'all have some of that here. So you're siloing everybody, obfuscating data, can't have bottlers see this or that, right? And all those things slowed us down. So how do you create a different model that enables speed? It's really mindset. My mindset is, how do I help you get work done versus how do I stop you from doing work? And people aren't stopping people because they're bad people and want to stop work. They actually feel like they're doing risk protection and securing the environment, right?
Right, but it's a manual step up.
But it's a manual step.
Curious on your methodology you use
For cloud,
yeah, because it was a number of them.
yeah, and Coke dealt with all of them,
That's it.
right?
That's why I'm asking that.
And, so this is a little bit biased because obviously I chose to go work for Amazon after. I like the AWS culture because it's an engineering company, right? And it's about roll up your sleeves and get work done. Never in a meeting do I have a conversation about revenue, right? What revenue do we get from this work done? Every meeting is about, did we drive customer value? That's every discussion. So it's a very unique culture. I get it. I was interested in the culture, and I didn't know this as much, but it was one of the very few companies that wasn't in my door at the end of quarter, end of year, trying to shove a contract right under my nose to get me to sign something for an extra whatever discount. And Amazon just doesn't do that. So it's just a different partnership and mindset. So I happen to like, not that the other guys aren't good. I had contracts with Azure and with Google and with everybody under the sun. But it fit our culture at Coke. And so it was just for me, a really good culture match. Yep.
One of the points on the slides that's, well, you need to correct the way I'm saying this.
Sure.
It's zero cycle time. Can you
Yeah.
detail that or maybe?
Yeah, I mean, what we were trying to do, and this of course is, across companies, but anything that you can do that creates, trying to come up with what would be a good example, so you're not going back through, right? I'm touching, it's multiple touches, I think is maybe the easiest way in my mindset, in my experience. How do I cycle through this once, right? And then I move forward. And a lot of that's automation, right? So that I am compressing cycle time as much as I can. It depends on the, whatever technology that you're dealing with. But if you can make an objective of 0 versus if you make an objective of pick hours or days, you'll probably hit that. If I make an objective of 0, I'm going to get more imaginative in how I address the problem. Maybe an Amazon example that I like was the 2-hour delivery, right? People are like, okay, we want you to do 2-hour delivery. Well, that's just not possible, right? You cannot deliver in 2 hours. I mean, think of all the distribution centers you need. Think, how do you get people to people's door in that time? How do you get the product in? I mean, all the barriers to reducing, speed to market, reducing cycle time. And so putting a team on that, problem solving, how do I get, right, 2-hour delivery done? What are the things that I need to put in place? One of the things that got put in place on the Amazon side is these Amazon Flex drivers. Have you seen them? Right? That do the last mile, because the last mile turned out to be the problem. So the objective is, how do I find, and how do I think about it differently? We're all stuck. I was 26 years at Coke. I was stuck in how I knew things worked. And so you needed to bring in some folks that can look at the problem from a different angle and figure out how to bring it down. Kind of sort of answer?
Yeah.
Hard not without knowing your environment, right? Yeah.
So I'm just going to give a general overview. Our problem, I think, we are going to encounter is we're going to have multiple clouds that collide and give us thunder and lightning into success. My example would be, you've got technology vendors like Oracle that are entrenching in their cloud.
Yeah.
And you have a huge capital investment. You can't exit that platform. How can you be successful in AWS when you've got that kind of interface? You've got success stories there?
Yeah, probably, Oracle's not our fave just because of that, that reality. But certainly, many of our customers are dealing in multi-cloud environments. And so certainly we can take you through government-based use cases, right, where here's how they isolated. We've, making decisions of these types of workloads go here. Because again, speeds your desire. So if you have everybody independently choose a different provider, you're going to create more of those challenges, and you're going to bring your knowledge base down to lowest common denominator, right? Because I've had to skill up in every capability. If you can say, I'm doing predominantly this with these workloads, you will create speed because you create knowledge, you create, right, the environment. Or everybody go, oh yeah, that worked, or I can reuse these components. But we certainly can take you through some use cases. Bruce is nodding in the back.
Bruce once told me that everything that accesses you needs to come through an API. We no longer have to talk to each other. So I think that's going to be how we don't talk to each other. No, I'm just saying that depending on the solution you choose, maybe there is some way of working out those APIs between one another, and then maybe it doesn't matter the back-end system that it goes to. I don't know.
There's some of that. Yeah, I mean, it depends on what you mix.
Yeah.
Right? But, I mean, my choice at Coke was to go predominant AWS, but certainly had some Azure and did some Google as well. But today, Coke's 80% Amazon cloud. That was my answer.
I was kidding. I was just saying that there are some ways.
And the technology is getting better and better. And the companies that believe more in open source and listen, lock in, certainly make it easier. And that's certainly our mindset. So again, why I'm here. Other questions? Yes,
The decision was it had to go to cloud. Is it from the top down, bottom up, and then once that's decided that, we took briefly about it, hey,
Yeah.
didn't accept it by.
yeah, so I, again, started with marketing, so that was somewhat easier because the digital property is not deeply embedded in your legacy application portfolio. So I was able to go to the CMO and go, I'm moving all your websites to AWS. Good? He said, good. I said, done. So that was pretty straightforward. But then when it came to the legacy application portfolio, right? And that was a conversation that we had with, what we had at the time was a executive steering committee team made of a couple of group presidents, so the president of Europe, president of Latin America, a couple of functional leaders, and IT. And so we made that decision, and we went through, because of Coke, we did the whole RFP process and all of that stuff. But as I said, Amazon, it just worked as a partnership, better for us as a predominant cloud provider. Also, we were a little early, so we were 2014. Nobody was close to the capabilities of Amazon at the time. I would still submit that we're still 5 to 10 years ahead, but you can be the judge. So that was the other factor. But I was trying to sell Amazon, it was just what I did, so sorry. Other questions? And if at some point y'all want us to talk just culture of Amazon, not really about AWS, it is an interesting culture. Some of the things about how decisions get made quickly, so Amazon can innovate at the speed it innovates, is another discussion we do with customers, because it's just kind of, I find it interesting, like, how do you do across so many domains operate at this speed? I just find it fascinating just from having worked in a big corporate environment where it's very challenging for Coke when we were trying to go into new businesses. We either stepped on them too hard and crushed them, or didn't step on them enough, and they were, kind of often left field being wild child. So it was getting that right is an interesting thing. So maybe it's some other day. But thank you so much for your time, and Mike, thank you so much for having me here. Hopefully I've been helpful and inspired some thinking.
Well, thanks again to Miriam. Enjoying our great state and our great skiing out here. We're very proud of that, and very proud of where we're headed with our technologies here as a state as well. I always say that Utah punches above its weight in some of the things we do, and I always feel like I'm competing with Morgan here is the ex-CIO for Arizona, so we're always trying to figure out how to one up some of the other folks out there. But I think we do a really good job here in the state, and so that's just to commend you on what you've done, and what we have to look forward to is still to kind of keep our foot on the gas and maybe look at how we do things at a higher frequency to accomplish some of our goals. So those things that we set out to do this next year, especially as we're shutting down our data center, we're looking at things that we can do more quickly, and if it makes sense to migrate something, let's do that. If it makes sense to move it, of course we will do that. But we want to make sure that we can compete and make our state look as good as possible. I'm proud of some of the things we're doing here in the state. It makes our governor look good, it makes our citizens look good, it makes all of you look really good. So again, thanks for all you do. Thanks for AWS coming out today and sharing some of these insights. With that, I just want to wish you well this year, and especially with some of these hurdles out in front of you, and good luck, and go Utes.
I think this one would be. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know how to stop that. End stream.